One.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Chatham Board of Selectmen September 29, 2020 meeting. This is a remote participation only meeting, and please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify me. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Chatham Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public have adequately access the proceedings as provided for the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 134-208-476#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Okay, thanks. So I just, a little bit of housekeeping here. We have some background noise presently, which does cause some reverb. I'm just going to ask that everybody please mute your audio, either on your phone or computer, and disable your video camera. This will help control any audio feedback or unnecessary visuals in relation to the meeting. Thank you. So right now I'm going to do a roll call of the Board of Selectmen's attendance. We'll start with Peter Kokolas.
Present.
Corey Metters.
Present.
Jeff Dinkins.
Present.
Dean Nicastro.
Present.
And the chair is present. So tonight we have a few items on our agenda. We will start off with the meeting minutes. That's part of the overview. Then we will go to public announcements and agenda item requests. We will move on to new business, where we will receive a coronavirus update. Then we will ask for public comments on the following business agenda items. And this is where the public can weigh in on these items. Mooring online management program, our special town meeting recommendation vote on the article, and housing updates. We'll convene a public hearing as water and sewer commissioners. And this public hearing, the public will give us input, and then we will move to possible actions as the commissioners. After that business is finished, the board will move to its business agenda, and we'll discuss the items, mooring online management, special town meeting, and we'll get an update of the housing related initiatives we discussed last month. After that, we will have another public comment period related to those business agenda items. And lastly, we'll adjourn for the evening, and we hope that everybody will go and watch the presidential debates afterwards. So saying all that, we're going to move into acceptance of the meeting minutes for September 22nd, 2020. Do I have a motion to?
So moved.
Okay, Corey, second.
Second.
Okay, Peter. Are there any additions or amendments or edits to the meeting minutes? Dean, and then Jeff.
Madam Chair, on page 13, third line from the top at the very end of the sentence where it says working group, I'd like to insert comma as endorsed by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff.
Yeah, just a couple quasi-nits on page 7, second paragraph up from the bottom. Last sentence, he said beach fees. It's just B-E-A-C-H, not B-E-C-H like the tree. It's the beach like the.
Okay.
And then on page, hang on one sec, page 12, the motion by Selectman Nicastro needs a second. I think I seconded that motion on the nomination for Barbara Siegel.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any others? Okay. If not, we'll take a vote to approve as amended. And we'll start with Peter.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. So the meeting minutes have been approved for September 22nd. Okay, so the next order of business is public announcements and agenda item requests. And I'll start with the Board of Selectmen. I just want to note that there was the passing of Sue Larson, who was the accounting assistant for the town for many, many years. I just want to send our condolences to her family on her passing. Are there any other agenda item requests or public announcements from the board? Okay.
Yep, I have something.
I'm
Madam
asking
Chair.
the board first, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on just a second.
Sorry.
Seeing none from the board, I'll turn to the remote participants. Please call out your name or raise your hand if you're on your computer, and I will call on you as you move forward. Go ahead. Did I hear Stephen Buckley? Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody
Herb
else?
Bassett.
Hold on just a minute.
Mhm.
Herb
Sorry.
Bassett. Go ahead, Herb.
Yes.
No, I'm just asking for your names right now, and then I will
Thank you.
I will ask. Okay. Anybody else? Then we'll go down the order. All right. So we have Stephen Buckley and Herb Bassett for public announcements or agenda item requests. Stephen?
Right. I saw on the agenda that there is going to be a discussion about affordable housing, but I think this qualifies as a announcement of some import in that after a family meeting yesterday of the Buckley family, the heirs of the late Joseph Buckley, we have decided to offer the 3 acres on Route 28 in response to the town's request for proposals for affordable housing. So, and I will comment later about that, but I wanted to get that
Okay.
out there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Herb?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering if the board could have, at the very least, a discussion or perhaps an agenda item to discuss what's going on with the census. And I'd give you an example. We sent in our paperwork and thought we were all done. And about 3 weeks ago, a very nice lady came by and we did it all again. And 2 days after that, a gentleman came by and I went through it with him a third time. I honestly don't know if we ever got counted or what happened, but there are a number of disconnects along the way, beginning with mailing in the paperwork. And I'm just wondering if you, as the Board of Selectmen, might want to take that up and discuss it. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. We have been doing a lot of outreach in the community as a board in the town to get numbers counted. I know that the deadline has been extended. Am I correct to understand that it has been extended into October? So we'll take that into consideration, Herb. Any other
Thank you
public?
very much.
You're welcome. Any other public announcements and agenda item requests? Okay. Thank you.
Hands up.
Dean, whose hand is up? Dean, go ahead.
Madam-
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chair, just to add on to what Herb Bassett was just saying, and I think I mentioned this to you privately, I responded to the census electronically back in January. And yet a couple of weeks ago, a census worker came to my house, had no information that I had responded. That was very curious. And so I provided the information as well. I may perhaps not as a separate agenda item, but you and Jill can decide that maybe the town manager can provide some update for us in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Okay. Any others? I see none. Okay. So we're going to move into new business and we'll get a coronavirus update from Director of Natural Resources, Dr. Duncanson, and Town Manager Jill Goldsmith. And we will, and we have moved it up into the new business agenda so that we can, the public can ask some questions. Dr. Duncanson, are you available? I see your little icon. There you are.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just our quick weekly update on the numbers. We are currently at 33.4 million cases worldwide. Unfortunately, yesterday, the world passed a dubious distinction. We now have over 1 million deaths worldwide. In the United States, we currently have 7.1 million cases and over 205,000 deaths as of this afternoon. In Massachusetts, we currently have 131,584 cases, and we have 9,423 deaths in the Commonwealth, and both of those numbers include both confirmed as well as probable cases. In Barnstable County, we currently have 1,779 cases and 174 deaths. And luckily, or not luckily, but however you want to look at it, those numbers have not increased dramatically over the recent past. We really didn't see too much of a bounce following the Labor Day weekend here on Cape, which is good news. In Chatham ourselves, we currently are still holding at 34 cases and the same 2 deaths that we've had for a number of months now, which, you know, that's good news that we have not been made aware of any confirmed additional deaths of Chatham residents. Just a couple other things I wanted to touch on. As you may or may not be aware, the governor announced today that starting October 5th, which is next Monday, lower risk communities, and that's being defined as communities that have been not in the red zone on the state's map and guidance that comes out on a weekly basis. So communities that have not been in the red zone on the weekly guidance that was issued on the 16th of September, the 23rd of September, and in tomorrow's report, we'll be able to move into step 2 of phase 3. As everybody's probably aware, we're currently in step 1 of phase 3. We've been there since roughly the middle of July. But hopefully communities that have not been in the red zone, and unless something changes drastically, that will include Chatham, because for the 16th and the 23rd weekly report, we were in the gray zone again. We had that one weekly blip where we were in the red zone, but for the last 2 weekly reports, we've been in the gray zone. And based on the numbers that we currently have, I expect we will still remain in the low risk category. So that means that starting on Monday, Chatham would be able to transition into step 2 of phase 3. That means a number of things. Indoor performance venues would be able to increase their capacity up to 50%. Outdoor performance venues would also be allowed to increase up to 50%, both of which would have a maximum of 250 people. I'm not sure that necessarily applies to any place in Chatham with those kind of numbers. But if we do have indoor performance venues, they would be able to increase their capacity. Indoor arcades and indoor and outdoor recreation businesses would be able to increase up to 50%. And some areas like trampolines, obstacle courses, roller rink, and laser tag will be permitted open. They have not been able to be open up till now. Fitting rooms will be allowed to open in all types of retail stores. Previous to that, fitting rooms could only be basically by reservation, which didn't work very well. And then gym, museums, libraries, and driving and flight schools will be able to increase their capacity up to 50%. So those are the major changes, as well as the governor is also today issuing a revised gathering order. The limit for indoor gatherings remains at 25 people for all communities. Outdoor gatherings at private residences and in private backyards will remain at 50 maximum in all communities, whether you're a high-risk community or not. In lower-risk communities, outdoor gatherings at event venues and public settings will be able to increase to 100. In communities that are not transitioning to step 2, the gathering limit will remain at 50. So those are the major changes that were announced by the governor today. And we will get out updated information on that as soon as we get it from the state, which will probably be sometime between now and Friday. And so I think with that, that's a quick update of all the latest activities that have occurred, since our meeting last week. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bob. I have a question. and it's related to the restaurants, everybody's doing the outdoor dining and we're seeing the tents come up, are up. Now we're seeing sides come up onto some of the local businesses. And is that, I'm a little confused because I thought that wasn't allowable. How is that being, what's the rule behind putting sides on your tent outdoor for your outdoor dining?
Yes, in recognition of the upcoming winter season, they are allowing sides on outdoor tents. However, that would then be treated as indoor dining in terms of the maximum number of people you can have.
Okay.
And you also, because of fire codes, you cannot have any propane heaters inside the tents once all the sides go down like that. So they did make those changes just in recognition of the transition to the colder weather months.
Right, of course. All right, I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions from the board for Dr. Duncanson? None? Okay.
right.
We can, no, we're gonna reach out to the public remote participants if there's anybody that has a question for Dr. Duncanson.
Elaine Gibbs.
Anybody else?
Steve Buckling.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Elaine?
Yeah, this is just a clarification because my eyes and ears kind of glazed over when you were listening, all the stuff that Baker came out with today. When you said now you can have 50 people outdoors, was that like at a private home or is that anywhere? Because that would contradict, our special town meeting. So I assume that was private homes and that we can have a special town meeting outside?
Yes, meetings of legislative bodies, which town meeting would be considered, are not bound by the limitation on the number of attendees. And that's been the way it's been since the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay, but so the 50 is for everything else that's non-legislative, whether it's private homes or public?
The limit of 50 people applies to outdoor gatherings at private residences and in private backyards, and also at event venues and public settings. In step 1 communities that transition to step 2 will be allowed to increase that limit to 100 at event venues and public settings. But the limitation of 50 for outdoor gatherings at private residences and in private backyards still remains.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen.
Yes, regarding the 50 limit on the gathering of private and backyard gatherings, is it required to have masks and 6-foot social distancing and/or 6-foot social distancing?
Yes, you should still try to abide by the mask requirement as well as social distancing if you're not within your family unit, So the answer to the chat is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Duncanson from the remote participants? Okay, hearing none. Do we want to move on to our town manager? Jill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have nothing further to add to Bob's report. So I know that there's a Board of Health item on the agenda if you want to go directly to there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, why don't we go directly to that and then we'll move forward. How's that? And who's going to make that presentation? Is it Dr. Duncanson or Judith Giorgio?
I don't believe Judy's on tonight. I can make that.
Okay.
So the Board of Health met last week, and one of the topics they had on their agenda was Schoolhouse Pond. A number of members of the board had been out visiting the pond on a regular basis as we got into the fall season, and they discussed it last week, and their recommendation to you and the Park and Recreation Commission, given the fact that use of the pond has fallen off as we've gotten into the fall months, as well as the fact that the beach has increased substantially as a result of the drought, which is not only common there. That's a kettle hole pond, so it rises and falls with the groundwater level. So as groundwater levels have fallen in response to the drought, the area of beach has increased significantly. And the delta between Schoolhouse Pond and Little Rider Pond next to it is now all pretty well exposed and dry beach. So on the basis of those facts, the board determined that it was appropriate to go ahead and recommend that the concrete blocks that had been put in place to limit parking at a number of spaces could be removed. But they did also recommend to both you and Park and Rec that the no parking signs in the perimeter of the lot where people used to park on the grass, if you will, as well as the limitations on parking on Sam Ryder Road to only Chatham residents, that those remain in place. So their recommendation was simply to approve removal, if you will, of the concrete blocks that were blocking off a number of parking spaces.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Any questions for Bob on this, or any recommendation for a motion on? No recommendation? Corey, go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you. I just couldn't find my hand for a second.
Your hand went up before your voice came on. Go ahead.
Okay. No. I'm fine with that. Just want to kind of relay some feedback I received from a citizen about Schoolhouse Pond over this past weekend. I believe it was Sunday. They went down to park, and the spaces that were available for parking were full. Primarily out-of-state plates, not permits. So I just want to make sure that we're doing some kind of level of enforcement to allow the beach to be used in the manner that we're hoping to have it, because it is still quite busy on the nice days, and I just want to make sure we're keeping oversight on that as best as possible.
Thanks, Corey. Okay, is there any recommendation, any motion to recommend to? Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I move that we accept the recommendation of the Board of Health to remove the concrete barriers.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Was that Corey?
That was Corey.
Okay. All right, thanks, Corey. Any further discussion from the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
do we need to include in the motion the continuation of the signage restricted parking along the perimeter of the lot, and the resident-only parking along Sam Ryder Road, that they remain in place? I don't know when those were to expire.
If Jeff wants to make that, amend his motion.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
And Corey, you okay with that? Okay. Okay. So it's the parking and the removal of the boundaries. Okay. Any questions from the remote participants, since this was under coronavirus update? All right. Hearing none, we will take a vote on this. Okay. Corey.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
And chair says aye. Okay. Thank you. That motion is passed. All right, so we're coming to the point now for public comments, which will be, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Jill. Sorry. The public comments, which at this time, we will, you can make, as a public, you can make comments on the Mooring Online Management Program, special town meeting recommendations to vote on the article being presented on Saturday, or the housing updates. I just want to let you know that we will probably be hearing from later on each of these matters on the special town meeting. I think the petitioners here, as well as our town moderator, will be speaking at that time during our discussion. Okay, so I see that Frank Messina's hand up and Stephen Buckley's hand is up. So I will turn to Frank first, and then Stephen, and then I will come back and ask the remote participants again if there's anybody else who would. I see Elaine as well, would like to speak. So Frank, welcome.
Yes, I believe I'm unmuted.
You are unmuted. Go right ahead. And which matter
Hi.
are you speaking to tonight?
I'd like to speak to the D item 2, the special town meeting and the vote recommendation on the article by the Board of Selectmen.
Sure.
I understand that your recommendation sets out relative to the article as it is, as I've read it, which is the uses, the proposed uses of the historic business district property as a overlay district. And that's pretty much, I guess I wanted to understand that was the extent of your motion tonight. I personally support it. But I would like to speak just very quickly as chairman of the Historical Commission. Myself and the commission over the past couple of years has been working very hard to attempt to get the Monomoy Theater and the adjacent Washington Home listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The commission has an application, a request, not an application, into Mass Historic relative to the eligibility of those properties. In addition, the commission and myself have been working with Mr. Clark and Alexandra Properties on their application also, as their intention is to restore both the theater and the additional properties, which we support. I just would like to make that, information available to you and to the public, that we're all working very hard to attempt to make this happen and to find some kind of, as we like to say, adaptive reuse of these historic properties. A lot of information out there, some of it, unfortunately, misinformation onto what's going to happen, but the commission hopes that some kind of a situation can develop where the theater and the other historic properties can find some of adaptive reuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, so we'll turn to Stephen Buckley. Stephen?
Yes, thank you. This is on the housing update.
Okay.
I have the Director of Community Development will be speaking. Katie Donovan will be speaking to that, and I guess about the request for proposal for plan for affordable housing. And as I indicated, well, the Buckley family, I'll be submitting something for that. But I have a question that says rolling RFP, meaning a rolling request for proposal, and I don't need to know, but when it comes up, I would like that clarified what a rolling request for proposal is. And also it talks about a consultant will be making a recommendation as to, quote, the most advantageous property for housing. And I'm at some point, maybe not tonight, but whatever, what criteria that would be most advantageous, whether that means the mostest with the cheapest anywhere in Chatham or what. I mean, it'd be nice to know what the points are that will be considered as most advantageous. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Elaine, what matter are you wish to speak to tonight?
Yes, thank you. I want to comment on the zoning bylaw amendment and the special town meeting.
Sure, go right ahead.
It's kind of hard to speak to you prematurely because I don't know where any of you stand, and it may be that my comments are unnecessary depending on how you vote. But I think it's unfortunate and unfair to have a special town meeting in October during a pandemic for a private development project where we are all forced to come out when we recognize the potential impact to the community, and we are unsure if it will even save the theater. I hope the selectmen, and I assume you did, watch the planning board meeting last night. They voted not to recommend it 0-6-1. And I think the members clearly articulated all of the unanswered questions in this bylaw and the concerns. I think Warren Chain in particular summed up pretty much what the consensus of the group was about all the unanswered questions. I'm also concerned that in this packet tonight, where you're going to approve this, that despite the fact that we can go to a separate website and see certain graphics, that what is actually in the warrant article doesn't even show the condominiums. There is no drawing of them, and yet we are expected, we are expected to vote on something where there could be anywhere from 24 to 32 condominiums, because we don't know, because we've heard all those numbers. And I don't think the bylaw bears any resemblance to what we were promised a year ago, and which was to save the theater. Yes, there are going, Alan Rust gave a compelling interview in the Cape Cod Times, which I also hope you read, against approving the zoning bylaws that exist. There is no requirement that the theater ever has to operate. What concerns me is we can restore the buildings, but they're recommending one is going to be a wine bar, that there will be dormitory housing, but it also could be 3 affordable housing units, and that there's going to be retail space. So it makes no sense to me. That's not what I remember the theater was. I would also like to remind the board of the due diligence you did as we were dealing with the Council on Aging. There was no question that for a 10,000 square foot building, we did traffic safety studies. On this particular one, they're going to exit off of Depot Road. The fire station's there, the elementary school and Veterans Field. Parking, they're only allocating 25 spaces for the theater, and their plan is to use downtown parking. You know, the community center and public parking where it's during the theater season, it's going to be packed with tourists. I don't think that's a plan. The density was a concern for the Council on Aging, and yet this density is going to be tremendous. And they're going to clear cut that entire, if you can imagine, clear cut that entire property from Main Street where you can see through to Depot. But instead, there are going to be 6 buildings, excuse me, probably 5 times larger in total than the Council on Aging, towering over Veterans Field. This was portrayed to us as saving the theater for 55 plus in needed housing. Needed housing, they've already acknowledged the condos are going to cost $1 million. That's not needed housing in Chatham. Needed housing is far less than that, like half of that. 55 plus, unless this is an actual legitimate senior living community, they can't discriminate against people. They make it sound like that's great, but they can't do that. And even if they could, there is nothing to prevent them being sublet. I believe that what this is going to be is more high-end, non-resident investment properties that are going to end up being summer rentals. So I urge you to vote against recommending this right now. I think it's not ready for prime time. I think there is a lot more work that has to be done. And I hope that you do that and that the Finance Committee does and follow suit as to what the Planning Board did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, I'm just going to ask again to the remote participants if there's anybody else who would like to speak to any of the issues in our business agenda.
Gloria Freeman on the telephone.
Gloria Freeman on the telephone. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Gloria. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I wish I didn't have to speak now in regard to your recommendation on the Monomoy Theater Overlay District. I would much prefer to hear what the petitioner has to say after last night's planning board meeting, and then maybe I wouldn't have to speak at all. But as I'm sure you know, after a long discussion, the planning board acted on behalf of townspeople and voted not to support the zoning amendment being voted on at the special town meeting on Saturday. I respectfully ask that the Board of Selectmen do the same thing. I know some of you remotely attended the planning board's meeting and heard the many excellent letters and comments regarding this proposed zoning change, all of them in opposition to the amendment as written. Excuse me. We only have to look at the stated purpose of the zoning change, the warrant article itself, which is that this proposed district is intended to encourage the restoration of the existing historic buildings, which comprise the former Monomoy Theater, while also providing for additional downtown housing options. That's the purpose. The petitioner promises nothing, and he's being honest about it. Nowhere does he say that we will have a functional theater, but he looks for great zoning relief in many forms, which will provide great profit for him from a very dense development of 24 condos that are neither affordable nor attainable. Remember that our zoning bylaw allows him to make a monetary contribution to affordable housing in lieu of providing 2 or 3 affordable condo units. This zoning change is not in Chatham's best interest, only the developer. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Anybody else wish to speak to any of our business agenda items? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to our public hearing, and I'm going to ask the clerk to read the notice. So Corey?
All righty. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Board of Selectmen, acting as Water and Sewer Commissioners, will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 29th, 2020, at 6 p.m. remotely via the Microsoft Teams meeting platform to consider an amendment to the Town of Chatham Rules and Regulations of the Water Department to extend the deadline for installing a separate meter for irrigation systems to January 1st, 2022. All interested parties are encouraged to attend. Signed, the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Corey. So we have before us a little bit of a discussion on this. Shauna, you are the licensing agent for this. Are you speaking to the issue tonight?
Just as the secretary to the board, this was a matter that the board supported back in April, but administratively it has not returned to you for the required public hearing. So we're doing so now to sort of close that circle.
Okay. And it was back in April 6th that we approved the staff recommendations to waive certain fees in certain deadlines to mitigate the disruption of the COVID virus. And this is part of that. So I'm just going to turn it over to anybody in the board who wants to, oh, actually, because this is a public hearing, we need to hear from the public first. If there's anybody, any of the remote participants who would like to speak on this matter of amending the Town of Chatham's rules and regulations of the Water Department and in relationship to the deadline to install separate water meters on irrigation systems. Is there anybody in the remote? So we have before us a little bit of a discussion on this. Shauna, we're getting feedback. The issue. Okay, are we all fixed now? All right. So anybody want to speak to this matter as a public hearing, a public participant? Okay, I'm not hearing anybody, so I'll turn it over to the board. Anybody want to have, I see Dean's hand is up. Go ahead, Dean.
Madam Chair, this looks to be purely a ministerial thing in that back in, when was it?
April
6th, we extended deadlines for various fees and other accommodations were made. We extended the deadline for installing a separate water meter on existing irrigation system to January 1, 2021. I think at that time, like most people, we were hopeful that we might be out of this mess, but we're obviously not. So the proposal is to extend it to January 1, 2022. So I'm going to offer the motion as follows. I move that the board, acting as water and sewer commissioners, to the rules and regulations of the Water Department, Article 6, Paragraph 5A, to extend the deadline to install a separate water meter on existing irrigation systems to January 1, 2022.
Do you have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, and further discussion, Corey, you had your hand up.
Yes, please. No, I fully support this action. I think it gives some relief to any property owner, but more importantly, it's just planning. I do think I spoke to one entity that does well drillings, and some of the projects they were doing that they had potentially set up for last year, they didn't get to this year. So it's just a matter of timing and planning. So while I fully support and I will vote in favor of extending the date till the 22nd, I encourage anyone who's going to look at this to look into it sooner, because it may take a while for them to get the actual install or process done. So plan accordingly. Thank
you, Corey. Any other comments from the board? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Corey,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. Okay, so we've extended the deadline to January 2022. So do we need to vote to close the meeting, or do we just move on? Is the hearing?
Madam
We
Chair,
just-
I'll move that we close the public hearing and move on to the regular Board of Selectmen agenda.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay,
Second.
let's
Jeff.
take a quick vote on that. Corey,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
and chair says aye. Okay, great. All right, so we're going to move into our business agenda. This is board discussion items and actions. And first is a mooring online management program and annual mooring fees surcharge. Waterways Regulation Section 1004, Waterways Bylaw, Chapter 265-14H. I know we have the Harbor Master, Stuart Smith, and our mooring manager, Michael Ryder, here to make a presentation on this. So, Stuart, are you up first?
I am. Good evening.
Hi. And I think we also have principals from the Mooring Info LLC here as well.
Yes, we do.
Okay, to answer any questions. Okay, great. Go ahead, Stuart.
So we come before the board tonight looking for your endorsement on a program that Michael will go into a little bit more detail on, that Mooring Info provides to communities to manage and have an online renewal program, which has been a long time town goal. This software program is specifically designed for us, the communities that have moorings. And we think it meets all of our requirements to move forward on this. I'm going to hand this over to Michael. Mike, are you there?
Hi, Michael. Are you on the call? I saw him earlier. I don't see him, Stuart. So do you want to continue?
Yeah, sure. I think you saw from my memo that this company provides these types of services for mooring renewals to a number of different communities, both on Cape and off Cape, with similar number of moorings that Chatham has. They include communities such as Situate, Newport, Rhode Island, and Falmouth, to name a few. The program is, like I was hitting on earlier, is designed to so the customers can renew their mooring permits online, so we won't have to have so many mailings out to our different customers. There's a fee for this, of course, and I think I said it in my memo that it's going to be $5.50 per mooring permit to renew it online, and $4 for each waiting list to be renewed online. This program can also be expanded to other permits that are within health and natural resources or outside of health and natural resources. Could go to beach sticker, shellfish permits, whatever the town may want to choose, if they choose to use this program. As you might remember, we tried some years ago with a different software program. It wasn't quite up to snuff to meet the needs and the sheer amount of information that we require. Two of the things that have been an issue in the past with the previous software program was, as you might know, people are required to fill out mooring inspection forms to ensure that the permits, or to ensure that the moorings are up to par, meeting the regulations, so we don't have boats coming loose during heavy weather. But also, the applicant for moorings is required to provide some sort of documentation that they own the boat. typically it's a state registration or documentation or a title in some cases. So I guess I think you've seen other renewal programs, and we have Joe and John here to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, I just got a note from Dr. Duncanson that Mike lost his connection and he's trying to reconnect Stuart. So I don't know if there'll be any further. I think a couple questions, Stuart, from my perspective is when you're talking about this proposed fee of $450 and I can't remember what it was.
$5.50 and $4.
$4, and that's in addition. That's a processing fee. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that's the processing fee for that the company would charge.
Okay, and that's what the company would charge and directly get paid for. So how, a couple of other questions, because this sounds like you've done a lot of due diligence on this process, on this program and things like that. I guess in the bigger picture of everybody using this program, I guess I'd have to turn to the town manager to see if that's something that is being considered by the town. Number one. Number two is, the Board of Selectmen are the folks that set and approve the mooring fees, and usually after a public hearing. And so I'm interested to hear what my fellow board members say about all this. And then perhaps we'll move into some specific questions about the software itself. I just want to throw that out there, that's some of my questions, concerns, and we'll just start with, I didn't notice who raised their hand first, so I really apologize.
It was Jeff.
Jeff, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Stuart. I think it's good news, and Jill and Stuart, good news that we have a recommendation, a piece of mooring management software. I think it's great news. I assume you've done your due diligence and that that management in Falmouth and Barnstable and Situate, Hull, and Newburyport and Newport, Rhode Island, which is fairly impressive, are pretty happy with this system. In my experience, a demo and you see all the bells and whistles and you say, oh, this is great. I love this software. But when the rubber hits the road, it's the implementation. So I'm just wondering if this outfit is going to be there, and I guess they're here tonight, but is the outfit going to be with us to help us with the implementation? Because we're saying in the memo that they're prepared for us to switch over to the system, for the next renewal period. And that's fairly aggressive. So I'd like to hear from them and see what kind of magic wand they're going to wave in order to pull this off, in the next couple of months. But anyway, I'm thrilled to hear that we're moving forward here, and hopefully we've got a good system. Thank you.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Stuart.
Do you want me to read or wait?
No, you can go ahead, Stuart, if you want.
So we've been speaking with Mooring Info for a number of years about this. I spoke with them. They've come to our Harbor Master Association and spoken to us. I thought a couple of years ago that it needed a little bit more time, and I knew other communities were interested in this. And I kind of wanted to see how they, when they engaged with this group, how it worked out for them. The ones that I've that listed in the memo, and I've spoken to my compatriots, are happy with it. There were some other software program companies that Michael met with and spoke with that didn't quite meet a lot of our needs. This group has been working for, I'm thinking probably right around 4 months now with Mike and the rest of us, even so far as to we've given them our information that we have on our current mooring permits, and they have, I'll let them explain it, but they have worked with our information thus far.
Just one follow-up. Is this in the cloud, or do they host this?
Joe could probably speak to that if he's here, but my understanding is in the cloud.
Yeah. Okay.
We can hear from the company if they so choose. Welcome. I forget who.
Joe,
thank you.
Joe, right?
Joe and John.
And John. Okay. Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you.
So this is Joe Romanowski. Yes, we are hosted in the cloud. So it's a cloud-based mobile application. So you can do it on, use your phone, mobile tablets, desktops.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Peter, did you have questions?
Dean was before me. That's okay.
Dean, go ahead. Thanks for keeping track.
Well, I put mine up last.
I had one question. You alluded to it, Madam Chair, and Stuart has it in a footnote number 1, which says the Board of Selectmen shall set, approve, reduce, or revise mooring fees after consultation with the Waterways Advisory Committee in accordance with the bylaw. The Waterways Advisory Committee shall hold a public hearing prior to any proposed changes or adoption by the Board of Selectmen of new or revised mooring fees in accordance with the bylaw. Like reduce, revise, weightless fees, haul fees, and late fees, and then you cite to portions of the bylaw. Now, mooring fees is a capitalized term. I don't know if it's defined somewhere to exclude anything like a processing fee. I'm just wondering, how about the process here? If we're supposed to wait until Waterways Advisory holds a public hearing before we can do anything, or is there something that suggests that a processing fee as opposed to the mooring fee is exempt from this? Perhaps you've talked with town council, and I don't know if people heard that because I was getting a notice that my connection wasn't very good. Did you all hear me?
Yeah, you were a little muddled, Jean, and I do want to say that Mike Ryder is on the phone if he wants to answer any of the questions as well. So go ahead. You want to do that again, Dean?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
I just really wanted to know in relation to the bylaw and the footnote number 1 under mooring fees. This is being described as a processing fee, and I think that's correct description. Is that exempt from the requirement that we have to have a public hearing by the Waterways Committee first before the Board of Selectmen can do anything? Have we talked with town council perhaps about that, or the special counsel who's working on the mooring bylaws? Mooring fees is a capitalized term. I haven't checked to see whether that's defined in such a way as to exclude processing fee, but I just really wanted to know how we get around correctly the hearing requirement before the board could act, or can the board act tonight? Thank you.
Sure.
I agree with Jeff. I applaud you for bringing this forward. I know we've been waiting for this a long time, and these are respectable communities, and so this is a good thing to be, a happy thing to be on our agenda. Thank you.
Sure. As you correctly pointed out, the town has been, this has been a town goal for a number of years. And when we revised the last segment of the waterways bylaws, you might recall that we highlighted all of the changes. And one of those changes, knowing that we eventually someday we get here, one of the changes that is in the bylaws is that, or is in the regulations, is that an online mooring renewal program is permissible. Whereas before it said it had to be done by mail or in person. So both the Waterways Committee, the Shellfish Advisory Committee, the South Coastal Committee, all of our water-related committees held hearings on those proposed waterways bylaws and the changes. And this change was incorporated within that. I look at it as a processing fee and something that has had considerable vetting.
Well, I'd be, Madam Chair, if I could just
yes.
make a comment. I'd be willing to go along with that. Stuart, I just would suggest that if we did take a vote tonight to approve this, that you and the town manager touch base with town council. I would hate to have someone later on challenge this legally on the basis that a quote processing fee of $5 or $4.50 was not properly heard at a public hearing before the board acted. I understand exactly the reasoning behind what you say, and hopefully that will work. But it would be, I think, beneficial if we were proactive in making sure that happened. So we could perhaps take a vote on condition that be satisfied, unless Jill has something to say now.
Jill? any comment? Jill?
We have not checked with town council yet, so that would be an appropriate condition on your vote. And just to clarify, this processing fee is imposed on every permit, not just permits that are renewed online. And there's a separate convenience fee for those using a credit card to pay. And if that's not the case, the vendor's here to affirm or confirm it.
So, okay.
Is there currently a fee, Jill? Is that what you're saying? There's currently a processing fee now?
For use of a credit card or an ACH payment for all of town invoices, it's called a convenience fee. And so it's that convenience that's paid by the applicant or license holder directly to the credit card. But we've had instances more recently with the board where we adjusted our rates, like our transfer station fees, to include that convenience fee so that residents weren't discouraged from renewing online because of that fee. So we built it into some fees and others are separate.
Okay.
Is this going to be separate or built in?
I defer to Stuart on that.
So this would be separate, it would be itemized separately on your mooring permit.
That makes it more defensible without a hearing, but go ahead. This is fine. I'm hearing.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jill. Peter, then Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only other question I have is I was going to ask Stu, will this help at all with the waiting list and so forth, or can it be used for that? I know we're going to get a set of rules and revised rules and regulations sometime soon, but can it be used in that regard?
It has the potential to be used in that regard. So eventually we would like to get to that point. We would also like to get to the point, and we're going to be bringing this up for further discussion, but we've talked about having more mooring information than we have online already. Right now, everybody's mooring permit is listed online and by name and I think permit number. It might be interesting if the community would like to do this to be able to click on, let's say, a mooring map, which these folks are able to assist us with, and you would be able to look at the person's boat, a picture of the person's boat, or maybe more information. Some people find that intrusive, so we'd have to find a balance as to, what type of information beyond what we already do you may like to see listed. But all of this is things that we can talk about in expanding this program.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and that's super. As long as we do it right. Thank you.
So Stuart, thank you. In the implementation side of this, you would mention, and I'll get to Corey in just a second. Sorry, Corey. That this could be up and running by the time that you start doing your billing for beginning of October. Is it because that you guys have already been working with this program, or these folks that you have things sort of already in place?
Yeah, we can, Joe and Mike can speak more articulately than I can to that, but they have been working quite a bit on this program. They're anxious to get it moving. It isn't the renewal program is currently anytime in October. We've mailed them in late October last year. And they're confident based on the fact that they've already done a considerable amount of work that they can meet that goal, but they can speak to that as well.
Is there a contract to this company? Is that something that we should be looking at? I mean, we're not seeing a contract or an agreement between the town and the company.
Right.
Has that been reviewed by the town manager or our town council? Jill, have you seen that?
Yes, they did provide me a contract.
Okay. All right. Okay. Corey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, I'm very happy that we're going to move forward with this type of system. I think it's going to be very beneficial to the town and all our users. But I do want to circle back to the fees for clarification purposes. The $5.50 applies to all permit holders, and then $4 for the wait list. Is this fee being collected by the town or by the vendor? That's my first question.
Mike, can you speak to that?
Sure, I can. My apologies, everybody first. I got kicked off right at the wrong time. Yes, Corey, you're correct. That fee is going to be assessed to everybody $5.50 for each mooring permit and $4 for each wait list. That fee will be collected through the I'll describe this. It's going to be collected by the company, okay, with our receipts, and that money will be removed automatically at the end of each month, so that they get paid that way.
Okay,
does that make sense?
Yeah, which brings me to my follow-up question. So, is there language in the contract about these fees and the length of the fees? Are they reviewed annually? Could the fees, every 6 months or the contract is for X amount of time? Could these fees increase by a certain percentage every year? Who determines that? So that's the clarification I'm looking for.
I understand, Corey. So it's a 1 year contract, a service agreement, if you may. So that is reviewed at the end, going forward to the following year, and each year thereafter. Joe or John could probably explain, if it will increase going forward, or how it would increase. Joe, are you available?
Well, I guess my point is basically this fee is determined by the vendor. Potential increases are proposed by the vendor and endorsed via the endorsement of the contract. I guess is what I'm saying.
So, Corey, this is John Vigilante with Morning Info.
Yep.
So we can write contracts for 1, 2, or 3 years, as we have with other communities on the Cape. So those vehicles, in terms of predicting and managing any increases, but we typically in new harbors do not increase in the first 2 years as we're settling in to understand the numbers and the effort. So I would not expect an increase, anything more than a cost of living or percentage point or two, depending on what we need to cover for expenses.
Okay, so this is a processing fee, which I'm just looking for clarity. I'm not opposed to it. I understand that it's the cost of doing business in this platform, but it's not a fee that we as a board of selectmen are going to be looking to hold a public hearing on. It's basically what I'm kind of getting to, which I believe is what our chair referenced earlier about whether there's a process of us holding, through the Waterways Committee, a public hearing. This fee would not fall under that review.
That's our thoughts.
Okay, we're going to.
But we're going to have town council take a look at that to be sure, Corey. The other piece is, what about disputes on payments? Who's going to be handling any disputes of payment or any issues that come up with just any problems that would happen with the processing of a mooring? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, obviously, but who's going to be handling those disputes? And if there is any dispute with somebody's payment, how is that going to be resolved? What kind of process does the company have, and what's the relation? How will the town be handling that as well? Mike or Stuart?
Mike speaking, Shireen. I'm a little confused. When you say dispute, are you saying what type of dispute do you mean?
Well, any kind of payment dispute, like we've paid for it, but the processing didn't go through correctly, and all of a sudden my mooring, there's no record of payment, and I don't have my mooring anymore. I'm just wondering about any kind of goods that would come up like that.
Well, we did talk about that, Shireen. Mm-hmm. With any new programs, we're always concerned about growing pains and implementation pains, and I think we'll have to look rather liberally at this renewal process. And we talked about when there's disputes such as that, we're going to have to give the benefit of the doubt to the mooring permit applicant, is my point.
Okay, I'm still confused about process, but I mean, and just wondering how that protocol would happen, who would get the information? Would the
So you
company, like say yeah, so a citizen of Chatham is disputing some sort of processing issue they might have had, and I don't know, maybe Joe or John can speak to that they've had those kind of issues before. But you know, how are we going to handle this so that people aren't like already getting dropped off of a having any problems? It's a customer service question more than
Sure.
anything.
Joe, if I can take Stuart, I'll take a shot
Sure.
at it first. So if there is a dispute, it typically comes up in two areas or two categories. The first being one that, for example, someone may have changed their vessel and there'd be a difference in length in the system because the permit on record might be different. The protocol that we follow is we always work under the authority of the harbor master's office. So when that dispute comes in, either through their office or where it principally comes in their office, the harbor master's department will change the data relating to that dispute. And then if there's any additional changes, we then work with the harbor master's office to reconcile the receivables, the credit cards, the reports to the financial department, etc. So a typical customer service transaction or support lines up in that way. It's the lead is the harbor master's office in deciding if that claim is correct, and then if there are sort of, I'll call mechanicals or financials to be worked at to reconcile, then we work with the harbor master to manage that correctly, as well as the finance department in the town of Chatham.
Okay, thank you.
That answer?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you. Dean, do you have another question? Your hand is raised.
Well, I just wanted to add on to what Corey was inquiring about. It would seem to me, since the recommendation from the staff is to endorse the surcharge at $5.50 and $4 respectively, that if that charge were to be increased in the future, they'd have to come back to us, not necessarily for a public hearing, but for an agenda item action of the Board of Selectmen. I think that's what Corey was inquiring about. I would like to suggest that in the recommendation that if when a motion is offered on this item, that the word processing be inserted before the word surcharge in the second line. And my suggestion would be that the consultation with county council be informal rather than as part of the actual motion. The understanding that the town staff would consult with Mr. Costello and make sure this is okay, and if it's not, they can come back to us.
Okay, Dean, appreciate that. Any other questions for the company or for Mike or Stuart from the board? Jeff, your hand is raised.
I'm not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure my question about the implementation was ever answered. Are they really ready to get this thing rolling for the next round of permitting? It's on us right now. I mean, darn close to it. So I'd like to hear from the mooring folks.
This is Joe Romanowski.
Go ahead, Joe.
So we've been working with Mike and Susan in the Harbor Master office for the past several months. We've already run their data, loaded their data in a test system, ran samples. So we feel confident that as long as they provide a new data load, which they're ready to do, we're able to load it very quickly within a day, and then in process generate the bills, since most of it has already been generated in a test system. So we do feel confident we can get this turned around very quickly, only because we've been doing it already.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any comments from, I see Alex is on the call. I don't know if she wanted relevant, if she's on the call relevant to this, whether this has any fiscal impact or anything that we should be speaking to, just from our finance director. Alex?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I was just on the call in case you had any questions regarding the processing surcharge and any of the revenue impacts. There should be no revenue impact to the mooring fees because that will go directly to the town. And again, as was stated earlier, the processing fee will go directly to the vendor. So it's an additional fee. Again, no impact to the town's revenues.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, any other questions from the board? Is anybody ready or prepared to make a motion on this matter? I see Dean's hand is raised.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen endorse the use of the Mooring Info LLC Mooring Management Program and endorse the processing surcharge to be charged to each mooring permit holder, $5.50 per permit, and waitlist customer, $4 waitlist position.
Do we have a second?
Second, Peter.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion from the board? We'll take a vote then. Go ahead, Peter.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Jean.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
And chair says aye. All right, good job, Harbor Master Department. We hope that we have an efficient system here going forward, and good luck for the next season.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Mike.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye. Bye. Okay, all right. Our next order of business is special town meeting. We're having on Saturday to vote to recommend a petition article for protective zoning bylaw amendment, the Main Street Theater Overlay District. So, Jill, do you want to kick this off a little bit, and then we'll hear from. Hopefully the moderator is on, and I believe the petitioner is on as well. Just a little bit about the process, and then we can sort of report back, I think, on what the planning board had done last night. So, Jill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So last night, the planning board voted to not recommend action to town meeting or special town meeting for this Saturday, October 3rd. So there was a lot of discussion. Katie's on the call, as well as the moderator and the applicant, to talk about the process. From what I heard from town council last night at the meeting, and he had followed up in an email to me that I forwarded to the board about what options are available. It all depends on what the applicant, or I should say the petitioner, wants to do. And that's basically, they need to decide how they want to proceed. If they're going to offer a main motion to amend the protective zoning bylaws as put in the warrant, or if they're going to move to indefinitely postpone consideration of the article. But again, that's up to the petitioner. Town council, and I can release this after tonight, did note that the article does require the 2/3 vote. And notwithstanding the planning board's negative recommendation or negative recommendations by the Board of Selectmen and or the Finance Committee, the bylaw amendment could be approved. The planning board's recommendation is only advisory in nature. A positive planning board recommendation report is not a prerequisite to town meeting approval of the zoning bylaw amendment. And I know there's some other questions about the 2-year rule and so forth. And certainly I can have Katie weigh in on that, or Allie, who's on the call, who addressed it last night. And again, the moderator is on this meeting.
Great. Allie, can we hear, or Katie, on the 2-year rule, and then we'll hear a little bit, I hope, from the town moderator. Allie? Or Katie? I'll defer to whomever.
Sure. This is Allie. I can weigh in if it's easier for you. So last night, the planning board did a zoning petition. They hold a public hearing on that. They did vote not to recommend, as the town manager stated, to town meeting. Regarding the 2-year rule, If the planning board does vote to not recommend to town meeting and the article does not pass town meeting, there is a requirement that the petition cannot come back in this form for 2 years. And I believe that, Attorney Costello discussed that in further detail at the planning board meeting last night. And Katie, if you want to weigh in any further, please do.
Sure, thank you. So Ally is correct that the petitioner would have to, I believe, make substantial changes to the article in order to be able to resubmit it within the 2-year period if the article does not pass at the special town meeting.
Okay. So I guess I'm just going to look at the board, and this will go out to town moderator. Tonight's vote we're taking is on the actual language in the warrant as it's written tonight. Any hypothesis or supposeds would be only a matter of public information going forward. The town meeting is the town's meeting, and we don't know how the public will take or move towards any action, obviously. But I'd like to hear from Attorney Litchfield if he'd like to speak to the matter a little bit.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill Litchfield. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I guess it's just a starting point or a clarification from my perspective on what both Ally and Katie said. While it is true that if this article is not acted upon favorably or if it's defeated, it can't come back in its present form for 2 years unless the planning board by a 2/3 majority approves it. So if this is not successful on Saturday, it's not necessarily a 2-year limit on its coming back. That would be up to the planning board to consider. And over and above that, there is the fact that if substantial changes are made, it could come back regardless of the so-called 2-year rule. I don't know, Madam Chair, whether the petitioner or representatives are here tonight. In terms of my thought is that it might be useful to know what they plan to do. You are correct in saying that the question before the meeting, every article and every warrant is a question. It begins by saying to see if the town will vote. So the question before the meeting right now is to see if the town will vote to adopt the proposed bylaw as set forth in the article. It could be subject to some minimal amount of amendment, but that was discussed last night in terms of responding to the concerns that the planning board has. And I don't think that can happen realistically between now and Saturday. And if it were a much more palatable article from the planning board's perspective, I think it might be significantly different from what the voters have in front of them. It would be very difficult for the voters to get their collective arms around that. So I will respond to any questions that you have or the public has tonight or on Saturday, but for me to be able to predict what's going to happen will really require a sense of what the petitioner is going to do.
Thank you very much. Maybe we should hear from representatives of the petitioner or from the petitioner himself this evening and get a little overview, and then we will go back to what we have to deal with that's in front of us. And this will be for general information, obviously. Would the petitioner like to speak to this tonight at all?
Good evening, Madam Chair. How are you?
Yeah, go ahead. Can you just state your name, please? I couldn't hear it.
Greg Clark.
Hi, Greg. Welcome. Go ahead.
Okay.
And if you can speak up, it'll be helpful, please.
Sure. The language that was drafted for the warrant was drafted jointly by the town and the petitioner over several meetings and discussions. This was put together. Our council presented it, the warrant, reading each and every line and section, explaining them and answering any questions about them. Not one individual of the planning board
the Board of Selectmen or the Finance Committee is on record at these meetings in which the vote was taken, having a problem with the final language of the warrant. The Planning Board, the Board of Selectmen, and the Finance Committee all voted unanimously to support our warrant in March and April of 2020 in the language that was submitted at that time. The only revision that has been proposed on this current warrant are two numbers. What those numbers do is at the petitioner's request, we chose to reduce the number of units that all of those other members had previously voted to support. We did that in an effort to make the property a little more acceptable to the people who would end up living there. The lot coverage on the proposed condominium parcel is 55%, 30% building, 25% roadway. This equates to a 45% green space. We're not clear cutting the site. You will not see the condos clearly from Main Street as a landscape barrier was proposed to be maintained. If someone was to go on Google Earth today and travel down Main Street, they'd be hard pressed to find another parcel that has 45% green space. We propose our parking on the proposed site has more parking than the theater has in the past years that it was operating. I also want to inform you that a 55 plus restriction is a legally permitted restriction and it is enforceable. What we're seeing is more inaccurate statements presented by people with individual agendas that aren't paying attention or caring for the other aspects of the project that we proposed. We propose to deal with historical issues, preservation. We propose to deal with affordable issues, and we propose to deal with a theater issue. The individuals who are speaking out in their little agendas are dealing with one specific thing that's important to them only, not the entire project as we propose it. I'm not going to walk through each of the sections of the warrants. I think everyone has seen it already, and everyone has seen the revised warrant. But I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to the board for any discussion on this or possible motion. Corey?
Sure, I'll start in. This is a very interesting exercise. The planning board's meeting last night was extremely thorough. Probably one of the longer ones they've had in a long time. I watched it via television. I missed the very beginning of it, but I was intrigued by the comments that were made in the process of allowing the public to speak and getting input on it. I'm going to go a little bit off cue because I'm looking at this from the perspective. I've been around here long enough. I can read the room. And I had an opportunity to bump into Mr. Clark and his wife in downtown on Saturday, and we spoke a little bit about his project. And, I was very forthcoming with the fact that I don't see a 2/3 majority vote prevailing on Saturday. I said there was, a lot of items that would need to be addressed at the planning board level heading into last night's meeting. But that was just my own personal read on things. I've served on the planning board. I've been around here a fair amount of time. I understand the process. So I was very forthcoming with that. I know there's a tremendous amount of individual groups that are looking at this from different angles: historical, theater, affordable housing, and that's all great. I also getting the sense that if there isn't some kind of mechanism to find a way to, continue down the path of, having the theater with the assurances that everyone is looking for, which I think there was a lot of verbal back and forth last night at the planning board meeting, and I do think there are things that could be done, hopefully to address a lot of those issues. Unfortunately, where the timing between now and the special town meeting on Saturday will frankly just not allow that. We have our meeting tonight. Finance committee meets tomorrow to discuss this. So, I don't want to, looking at the language, we're going to vote on the language that is presented before us tonight, right here in black and white. To vote against it says, okay, just go forward under the GB2, develop it as you want. You have every right to do that. And then the various review boards will take their time into that process. But voting in favor of this language, clearly after last night's planning board meeting, and recognizing that language would be amended to even possibly get the 2/3 majority. It's tough. So I think we're in a rock and a hard place. I don't want to send a message that we're shutting the doors. I would love to find a way to move this conversation forward. And again, on another side note, I understand the frustrations with having a special town meeting. This town has had multiple special town meetings. There's been some sentiment and some emails that have been presented. Mr. Farber sent a very good email out to the planning board. I'm in full agreement that most of these issues need to be dealt with at annual town meetings. I think this town has had far too many special town meetings, but this is where we are this year or this week. And I'd love to find a way, on a side note, to kind of keep our focus more on our annual town meetings. At whatever $10,000+ a pop, it's kind of pricey over time. But I don't think we can vote yay or nay on this. The language we know is going to have to change. That was even stated by both parties last night at the planning board meeting. So I'd love to see what my colleagues have to say, and if there's any response from the applicant, if there's any way to move this in the direction that I think a lot of us want to see, with all the assurances in place. But it's going to take some time, and I don't think we have the time between now and Saturday, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. All right, I'm not sure again whose hands up, so I'm just going to turn to Peter and Dean. Go ahead, Dean.
I think Dean was next. Sure.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope my connection continues as the previous speakers were talking. It was going down here and there. Let me go forward. The Monomoy Theater was a town treasure, and I was disappointed when it closed. Nonetheless, when last spring the new owner of the property presented a concept plan that included a theater component, it gave hope for the future of the dramatic arts in Chatham. So the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board both endorsed the proposal that was to be presented at the annual town meeting in 2020. But I think that was done with the expectation that the plan could be further refined to clarify and address various issues associated with both the theater and the residential aspects. I watched the entire planning board meeting last evening, and it was quite evident that these issues remain. I want to commend the planning board members for their thorough and insightful examination of the plan. And in particular, I wish to associate myself with the comments of Warren Shane and Bob Wirtschafter. It's not clear what type of theater operation is being planned, nor how the residential component would fit in with Chatham's housing needs and parameters. In short, more work needs to be done before this article should be adopted. Among other things, on the theater side, I think the applicant could benefit from a consultation with those who successfully conducted theater operations on the premises for 50 years, especially the former artistic director, assuming that has not yet taken place. I also think the residential and theater components need to be woven together with tighter assurances. But let me also say a word about the process. This is the third special town meeting in Chatham during this calendar year 2020. I have opposed all three. I don't want to be there Saturday, but because of my elected position, I have to. I think it is an undesirable precedent, and I think an insensitive one in the middle of a pandemic, after the Board of Selectmen made a well-considered determination for reasons of the public health not to hold a special town meeting this fall. I think it is an undesirable precedent for a developer to compel a special town meeting on the voters in order to advance a development project. I hope we don't see this again. I'm prepared to vote a negative recommendation this evening, but I would encourage the applicant to withdraw the article and take the time between now and the next annual town meeting to rework and refine the proposal before resubmitting it to the voters for consideration. If the applicant were to do so, most people would not need to show up on Saturday, and the moderator could entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. If the applicant does not do so, I believe the article will be defeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Who is next? Jeff? Jeff? Jeff, would you like to go next, please?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, much of what I say has already been said. I echo Selectman DeCastro's sentiments about the planning board. They did a wonderful job, I thought, well considered and thoughtful. Most notably, Warren and Art and Mr. Bob Werschafter. Really thoughtful approach. I had difficulty with this Warren article when the petitioner solicited to have a special town meeting. I thought I was very disappointed. I said that in public. I said it on camera. Very disappointed that the petitioner decided to take that avenue when, in fact, this board twice had demurred or did not vote to have a special town meeting, but to hope for a May annual town meeting next year once we get through the COVID, knock on wood, assuming we have a vaccine. So this petitioner had an extremely high hurdle with me right out of the get-go because I thought it was inappropriate, somewhat selfish, to ask this town to come together for a town meeting, even outside. And we've done it once successfully, but that doesn't mean we have to beg disaster elsewhere, to come together again to vote his interests. This is a gigantic development in the middle of this town that we're going to live with forever. And I believe by submitting this petition for the special town meeting, we have lost the ability to vet this project the way we've always vetted these major projects. Ms. Gibbs earlier mentioned the Council on Aging, and I agree with her. That project has been vetted, it's been reviewed, it's been studied. Where it goes, we don't know yet, but the building and the project itself is where I think the town is fairly comfortable with, but not so this. Number one, there's no guarantees anywhere that the theater operation, which I believe was the reason why folks signed the petition initially, is going to happen. Number one. Number two, the promise there's no guarantee that, and well, first of all, I don't think there's enough affordable housing. This project doesn't address the most crying need in this town, which is the need for affordable housing and attainable housing. 3 two-bedroom units out of 24 doesn't do it for me, and hopefully it doesn't do it for the rest of the town. Again, high hurdles, no guarantees about the theater, not enough affordable housing. And then there's just not enough time for this town to seriously consider the nuances and the breadth and depth of this project. It's unfair to us. So I will not be voting in favor of it. I do echo Selectman Castro's notion of, hey, if we hadn't been petitioned for a special town meeting and this petitioner came forward at the annual, having gone through the appropriate vetting procedures, I think this petition would have a decent shot of a project of some similar ilk getting approved at town meeting. But I do not see a way forward at this special town meeting for this petition, and I will not vote in favor of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I'd like to make a comment about affordable, attainable housing that was made. Our priority in the town has been affordable and attainable, and not to get into details, but affordable is a legal discussion. The two affordable units that will be part of the 24 is what as was mentioned, is a requirement of our subdivision bylaw. And we haven't had many in the last few years, but recently we had one out towards West Chatham, which was a housing development. I'll make the point about 2 affordable units in a 55 plus community, even in, and he's correct. You could set a restriction of 55 plus. That's market rate, and you're going to put 2 affordable housing units in there. When we've addressed this in other areas, builders, as was noted, normally pay rather than put the units in the spot. That's one option. The second option is to build an affordable unit somewhere else. And one of the realistic reasons, and I'm not going to, I don't want an answer to it because it's not in the warrant. But one of the realistic reasons is if you have a condo fee, how do you split that up? And you have concerns with who has to pay how much and so forth. So realistically, that is going to be a problem. Not saying they couldn't do it, but I did too watch the planning board, and I was impressed. I'm not going to go through all of that, but I do have one observation, and it's going to get a little bit down to what Mr. Ford had gotten into. He made the point, and rightfully so. This is an enabling bylaw change, for a specific property. If it's approved, then it's then going to go to a site plan, to the HBDC, and all of those other things that people want to happen. And his argument is, well, this is just going to enable us, but your real look is going to be at the planning board and the HBDC and so forth. I want to make a point. When we do site plan reviews, and I'll give a couple of examples. One that Mr. Ford probably remembers well is the Mayflower. We had CVS, we had Cumbies. We had multiple meetings on those. The idea that there isn't as much green space downtown, that's true, because the downtown was built before we even had bylaws. And oh, by the way, something like the Mayflower and Cumbies were also within the requirements that were there, but the public had extreme amount of input into what was going to happen. Now, this enabling bylaw, should require as much or even more public input and review before we put it in, because it's for a single property, and it's and it's nothing wrong with doing an overlay. That's neutral. It can be good or bad, but the point is there has not been any outreach on this. And Mr. Clark made an impassioned explanation last night, although today I could understand his frustration, pointing that we voted on something before and then we're going to change it. Well, I'm sorry, things change, and we did have a pandemic, but I have no reason, to question his intent or what he wants to do. I thought he made good points, but the intent needs to be better spelled out directly in the warrant that we're looking at. The point is, we have one parcel. It is not unreasonable to reach out for public and education and so forth on the town and where they're going to proceed. My understanding was that was from the community development group. That was the intent. But like everything else, things change with COVID. It is not the town's fault, and or the public's fault that the timing is bad. This enabling bylaw, for the benefit of this one parcel, no matter how well-meaning and the potential benefit, at least in my opinion, needs to have its due process. We have to understand how we can have a verification of what was intended with an understanding that is written and understandable by the public. I understand enabling technology is the concern, but in this case, it needs much more discussion, and I can't see voting for it. Although, I mean, I went to the theater all the time. I want the theater, and I think it's an important part of Chatham, and I would hope that the petitioners understand that I think we'll get a better product and will not only for us, but also for the applicant, if he listened to what the public's going to say. It's tough. You can't get things, bylaws passed in this town that meet all the requirements to start with. And, and Corey and I have been there. And so you have to have public outreach, and you have to expect that just because one board or two boards think it's a great idea, that the public's going to embrace it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Peter. I'm not going to reiterate. I did watch the planning board meeting last night, and I thought that there were some very important statements made by Mr. Chain that he brought to light. I feel like for all of us, we've been on somebody else's timeline here. Obviously, we didn't want to do a special town meeting. One of the things that I always go back to is, there's a lot of passion around the idea of the theater, and it's an important cultural piece to the town. But the building is just a building. That the theater is a program, and I'm not, there's no guarantee that there will be a program or what that program is going to look like. I felt last night's planning board meeting was a start of something, a start of a conversation, and that if given enough time and vetting, could lead to something that the public could wrap their head around. And so I'm not, irregardless of somebody else's timeline, I'm just not going to vote to recommend this zoning bylaw at this time. I'm hoping that the applicant would defer until another time and move forward with a more of a community engagement process. So that's where I stand here. I guess where we're at is at a time critical to vote I guess we'd be voting in the to recommend. So I'd accept a motion as a matter of protocol to recommend the article, unless any other members of the board had something they'd like to say. And then a second, and even though I hear that most of are going to vote in the negative, we need to do this as a positive, so in the vote to recommend. So is anybody willing to make that recommendation?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This is Dean. I'll offer a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommend approval of this article to the special town meeting on October 3rd, 2020. But that's the motion. If it's seconded, I wonder if the applicant or his counsel wishes to speak further and perhaps indicate whether they might be inclined to withdraw their article.
Okay, well, let's do a motion and you'll second. Okay, so let's reach out to the applicant or his counsel to see if he has any comments before we vote. Mr. Clark? I hear no comments from Mr. Clark or his representative. Corey, your hand is up.
No, well, I'm just gonna. It's just tough because we're voting on the language that is in our packet tonight, and I mean that is what it is. I mean it's the cut, the black and white of the scenario. But clearly, after last night's planning board meeting and the verbal exchanges between both parties, that language will most likely be amended at some point. But our question is, could it be amended by Saturday? And I don't believe that is possible, but we don't know for sure. Obviously, town council, representative council will meet, possibly. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure what we're. I feel in a bind. I don't want to vote against this because I don't want to say forget it, move forward. Do what you can by right. But I'm certainly not looking to vote in favor of this and endorse it because I think it needs a lot of changes. So I feel on a rock and a hard place myself, So.
Okay, I understand that. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand what Corey's saying also. I just want to make the point, and a little differently than everyone said. During the planning board and towards the end, it was obvious that could be an accommodation made between the planning board and the applicant. That says to me, it needs a lot of work because the planning board may have some opinion on what should be done, but then it has to go to other reviews, and it certainly wouldn't give the public time to see it. So I have no way of saying yes to this, you know, understanding that we all, I want to see it move forward. I just wish that they take the time now because of circumstances that were not all their fault, except the call for a town meeting and a special town meeting in my mind. That they have plenty of time to work something out and have it ready for the fall for our spring town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a vote to recommend and a second.
Town
Town manager, Jill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to know one more thing from Town Council Pat's email to us that the applicant or petitioner or a member of the public could vote to refer the matter back to the planning board, which would essentially conclude the business of town meeting without an unfavorable action by town meeting. And it would not preclude resubmission of the proposed bylaw amendment to town meeting at a later date. So again, I know it's not what you're considering, but it's something that was identified. And if the petitioner, I'm sorry, could weigh in, I think that would help us as we, you know, we're going to have staff out there first thing Saturday morning, setting up, and we're getting restrooms and all of that. So if the applicant could, they'll let us know as soon as possible what they plan to do. I think that then we can notify the public, understanding that just a withdraw doesn't necessarily work to not convene town meeting. And certainly the moderator could weigh in on that too.
Yes, I'd appreciate it if you would. Bill? Bill, I'm not sure you heard me. Bill? I'm sure, I think you might be muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am unmute. It's a rare condition for me to be mute, but I fixed the problem. There are some technicalities. Several people suggested that the applicant or petitioner withdraw. That actually can't happen. The town clerk and I, at least, have to appear at Veterans Field on 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. And I think given the current posture, I think we all have to expect that there will be a town meeting. The lead petitioner could decide to not move forward, could assent to the notion of referral to the planning board or to indefinite postponement, but town meeting is run by the voters. And there is the possibility that even if the applicant or lead petitioner decides that he'd like to have it referred to the planning board, any voter could make an alternate motion. So we don't know what's going to happen. And unfortunately, it is sort of late. You know, a lot of us tend to read the local weekly. That's going to come out the cutoff date of this evening. And I don't think we have any new news in that regard to be in Thursday morning's paper. If there is a consensus developed between the planning board and the lead petitioner, and if we're all made aware of it, we can perhaps try to publicize it, and maybe people won't have to come. But right now, the only thing we have in front of us is the article, and it is my understanding for what Mr. Clark indicated that he or his representative will be moving that article affirmatively unless a suggestion such as Jill just made becomes more appealing.
Thank you. Okay. Everybody clear? Thank you, Bill. Okay, we're at a moment of voting. So unless there's any further discussion from the board. Okay, okay, all right, so we'll take that vote. Peter?
Nay.
Dean?
Nay.
Corey?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine, don't apologize. Jeff?
Nay.
And the chair says nay. Okay, so we did not vote to recommend by 4 votes and 1 abstaining. Okay. All right, moving on to the next matter. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff and the town moderator for being on the call, and Mr. Clark as well. So we're going to move forward with our next item, which is, excuse me, housing update, Community Development Director Katie Donovan. We have several items that we had looked at previously this last month. Emergency rental assistance program, housing community engagement consultant, request for proposal for private land opportunities, and middle road status, and the town inventory. So I just want to make a comment that we do hear a lot of criticism about us, you know, not getting some things done, but I think we've been very thoughtful in our approach as we've going through this, that we are taking these steps in a way that's going to build on itself in a manner that's going to be really good for the town. Just putting it out there, just to set the tone is let's get some stuff done. All right, Katie.
Great, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So as you'll see from the memo, and Ally is also on the call, as you saw earlier. So in case there are additional questions that she may be better suited to answer. But just a quick update for the board. The Emergency Rental Assistance Program, the RFQ, was issued last month, actually in August 5th, 2020. And we received 3 responses, and ultimately, after a thorough review, we've chosen to award the contract to the Housing Assistance Corporation, and that was based on not only the administration fee, but just their vast experience in that type of program. So I'm not sure, Madam Chair, would you like to ask questions as we go down each item?
I think that would be easy. It's obvious that, you know, we did have thorough discussion on the rental assistance program, and I'm really happy to hear that HAC is going to take the lead on it. This is their thing, and they do it well. So, and I also heard that they're now sort of done some consolidation in some of their program and working together with Lower Cape Outreach for more Lower Cape initiatives, which sort of probably streamlines some process of need for our communities, which is great. Any questions for Katie about the Emergency Rental Assistance Program? Any questions from the board?
Just
Go ahead.
Peter, just a comment, and I think it was, I agree, and I'm glad you went with HAC. And if it wasn't the right group, I'm sure you would let us know. And their discussion with Lower Cape Outreach I think is laudable. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program? Okay. All right, Katie.
Okay, so as far as the Housing and Community Engagement Consultant, the RFQ was issued on August 7th. We have received 2 responses to that RFQ at this point in time, and we're actually in the process. We will conduct interviews and report back to the board. So we don't have anything further on that, just to say that we will have further recommendations. And if, you know, the need is there, we may, as discussed during the previous meeting, we may end up coming back to requesting additional funds from the Affordable Housing Trust if necessary.
Thank you. Katie, Mr. Buckley had a question about the Housing Community Engagement Consultant in some of the language in the RFQ, and maybe Jill can answer this. He wanted a further sort of understanding of a person to help determine the most advantageous properties for use of affordable and attainable housing. Jill is, and I'm assuming that you both sort of worked on this proposal together. If anybody wants to speak to better define that sort of language.
Sure. If I could start, I think that it may be in the next category, actually under the affordable, the next the RFP for the land.
Okay, sorry about that.
The rolling RFP he asked about.
Yes, but he did also ask about the advantageousness for housing. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
In that regard, I can answer the fact that what we're calling a rolling RFP is the idea that we will continue to issue as we, see the potential need for additional land may be required, or say we didn't get any proposals during this time period, we may wait a few months and issue it again. And that's what the term rolling means, is that we will periodically issue this RFP.
Right.
As for the other questions asked by Mr. Buckley, I would ask that he submit them to me in writing, as that is the requirement under the procurement laws, as opposed to answering them in a public setting.
Okay.
So if once we receive all questions, we then respond to all of the requesters of the proposal with all of the answers. So that's the process for that.
Thank you. Dean, you had your hand raised. Jill, I'm sorry, Dean, did you want to add anything, Jill? I know you popped in.
No, just that rolling is that it remains open for an opportunity for a private property owner to offer it to the town. And it's more clear if you review the RFP itself. It clarifies it.
Thank you. Dean?
Yeah, this has to do with the prior on the consultant, the engagement consultant. I received an email from a member of the Residents Committee inquiring or suggesting that instead of engaging an outside contractor, the town should consider utilizing, I guess, volunteer services of local developers who might be expert in this field. I'm not proposing that as an alternative myself. I'm just wondering, Katie, if you had any comment on that. One thing that occurs to me up front is the importance of neutrality and lack of conflict, absence of conflicts of interest or appearances of conflicts as being one consideration. Did you have anything you wanted to offer? I don't know if this individual is watching this meeting or will follow it, but I thought I'd just bring this up.
Sure. My response to that would be that the community engagement consultant that we're looking for really is more of a housing. They have more knowledge about housing and housing programs, and some development experience as well, but not necessarily the type of subdivision development that I think that the resident is speaking of. So what we're looking for really is somebody with expertise in managing projects that result in affordable and attainable housing. And so that's what we're looking for. And I think that Allie has offered to respond as well.
Allie?
Thank you so much. This is Allie. I just want to also point out that the group that we're hoping to engage on this, we really hope that our future housing initiatives will be a community-driven process, and we're hoping that this consultant will be able to really engage the community through a series of public meetings as well, so we can get a lot of feedback from the residents to figure out what kind of housing is appropriate going forward for these specific developments. So I think that that's really a key piece of why we do need this consultant. And so that's really it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I imagine that there's so many different federal and state programs out there that we as a community, with a housing consultant, we might get a better idea of that. I truly believe that this is a really good opportunity for the town. Peter?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be quick. I just want to make the point and reiterate what you said at the beginning. If you look at what we've done here since last fall, with a hiccup, a terrible pandemic, but is a process to look comprehensively at how we're going to attack our problem for affordable and attainable housing. And it's not a simple issue. I mean, a number of us have gone to a number of programs and housing programs and listened to people that do this kind of thing. And there are ways that it can be done once we have the parcels of land that we think we're going to use. And that's probably our first concern, is we can make a decision on that, not saying today or tomorrow, but in near term, so that we have something to move forward with over the next year. Mr. Buckley asked a couple of questions, and I believe you answered them all. But an RFP process is a process that is between the contractor who, or the individual who's going to make an offer and what's in there. And if they have any questions, it should not be done in public. It should be done with community development, and they have to be in writing, because you have to be, this community development office has to be considered to be looking at the issues that are, or not the issues, looking at how to pick pick and choose in a very fair manner. I would assume that the RFP has at least some sort of generalized points that the person who's going to supply gives them what you're looking for. And if there's a question, there's a process by which you put in questions and answers. So I think if you want to comment on that, Katie, please do.
Sure, absolutely. So yes, there is criteria listed in the RFP, but that criteria should follow the appropriate procurement laws. Again, not to be discussed in public, perhaps, while the RFP is still out. And so I'm happy to take all of the questions and again reply with responses to all of the questions, not only to that proposed applicant, but to others as well. To anybody that actually requests the RFP, we'll provide those answers to everybody.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So have we gotten all of the information on the purchase of real property?
Sure. Just one other thing is just that the submission date for this particular round would be for October 15th, 2020, and so
Okay.
we'll look at those as they come back. If you don't mind, I'm actually going to skip over the Middle Road property because I think Allie is going to speak to that, but I'm just going to go into the town-owned parcels that would like to be to bring back to be used for affordable housing. So staff has begun to look at those specific parcels that we'll bring back for recommendations. But as we start to look at all of these properties, not just those potential new ones that we bring back, but also Middle Road, and then perhaps any responses that we get through the RFP, I think that the best thing is to probably look at everything all together and see what the options are. So that would be our intent, if that's okay with the board. Would bring everything back around this at the same time.
That would be a thoughtful approach. Peter, your hand's still up. Peter, Peter, did you want to speak?
Yeah, I put it down, but I'll comment anyway. I got an opportunity. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, you're going to look at all the property, which is good. I would say one thing that was brought to my attention by a few people is the property at Marconi, the area where we were thinking of putting the COA. That should be in there. If it's not, I assume you were looking at that. But in any case, it's in a good location. Like everything else, it has its good points in it, and it has some problems. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Jeffrey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Do you want our notions about town-owned land tonight? Do we email them to you, or?
You could give them to me tonight, or you could email them to me. I mean, those are things that
I want to take another look at the piece of property on near Liberty Commons, Hampton Place up there. Its topo is a little tough, but topo can be dealt with. I also, and assuming that, and I don't know where the Council on Aging is going, but I think stepping stones is also in play, if you will, as a possibility. Excuse me. And I had a question about if we identify other parcels that the town doesn't own, but we'd be particularly interested in. Is there a process about a solicitation to private owners? I'm just throwing it out there. I haven't heard of one, but if there is a parcel of particular interest, I would just want to throw that on the table as perhaps we'd be thinking about how we approach owners.
Right. And again, so through the proper procurement laws, I think as I had stated earlier, we do need to, we can't necessarily direct deal, but I would seek likely town council's opinion on if there is a parcel of land that we're interested in, if we wanted to approach, and then perhaps ask somebody to respond to an RFP. That may be the way to do it.
All right, thank you. That'd be helpful, Katie. Thank you.
Great, Katie, thanks. Yeah, and we've been kicking around Old Harbor Road a lot. I'd really like to be able to find out about that deed, and that could be a great renovation for a rental or part of the MCI housing project as well. Anybody else have any questions on this potential town-owned parcels for Katie? I'd give it a little more thought. I definitely will send you an email, and then look forward to what you're going to bring back to us. Any other questions? Okay. So if you want to just move on, if Ally is making the presentation on town-owned Middle Road, or is there anything more you needed to add, Katie, at this point?
For now, I'm available for questions.
Okay.
If need be.
I appreciate that. Hey, Ally.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome again.
Thank you. So this is just a quick update. The last time we were here, the Chatham Community Housing Partnership had recommended that the entire parcel, the town-owned parcel north of Middle Road, be used for affordable and attainable housing. The Board of Selectmen wanted us to, look at some of the past efforts and then also some new efforts and configurations of housing that could be on the property. So just a quick update. On September 23rd, 2020, the Chatham Community Housing Partnership did review the past efforts that the town had done for this specific parcel for housing, and they are currently still recommending that the entire parcel be used for affordable and attainable housing. I do believe as well that you have a letter from the partnership in your packet tonight. So I just wanted to, again, update you that we are still looking at those past efforts and then potentially some, new configurations and things like that. And as Katie had stated, it is our recommendation that when we do come back with some of the parcels that were in the rolling RFP, if we do get any applications for that we bring back Middle Road at the same time for discussion. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Great, Ally. I think that doing any limitation to the thoughts and process of Middle Road, it doesn't allow for a bigger, broader look-see at it, and the community. I think the community is the ones that will be vetting these projects as we go forward, and I think we should allow the opportunity that we look at the project, the property in its entirety. That doesn't mean it's going to all be developed, but I think that we should keep an open mind. I know we had some concerns the prior, but I just want to put it out there that I'm in favor of looking at it, and I'm in favor of what the partnership did make as a recommendation. Dean, you had your hand up first, and I believe Corey, and then Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to talk about Middle Road in a second, but I was on mute and I wanted to say.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. I didn't get my hand up in time. In connection with the prior, the comment on Old Harbor Road, I just wanted to make sure that we had some written confirmation from town council, who we heard secondhand basically, has said that the restriction on there in the deed is no longer viable. I'd like to see that in the form of an advisory opinion from town council on that. I'd also like to know from town manager when the Old Harbor Road is brought forward to us, whether she foresees any possible municipal use for that building on Old Harbor Road as opposed to housing. And I say that because the prospect for housing on Old Harbor Road is pretty limited in terms of the number of people you're going to be able to benefit. But I understand, that is a positive in and of itself. With respect to Middle Road, I just would remind the board that on the 28th of July, we voted to have staff return with a modified recommendation to declare surplus a portion of the property north of Middle Road for the purpose of affordable and attainable housing. So I guess Ally can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you've already made that determination, in which case fine, or whether as part of the process, respecting the vote of the partnership, which I do respect. I know they want the whole of the parcel. But I wanted to know whether that determination has already been made that the whole of the parcel is going to be presented to us at staff level. And I understand what the chair just said in terms of her thoughts that the whole of the parcel should be evaluated, but I'd like to know what we're doing in response to the vote that we took back in July. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Yes, no, we are definitely going to come back with different recommendations for portions of the parcel as the board has requested. I just did want to put in there that the partnership did review the request and the comments from the Board of Selectmen at the last meeting that we discussed this, and they are still recommending the parcel in its entirety be used for affordable and attainable housing, since this is their initiative that they had put forward back a month and a half ago, I think, when we discussed this last. But no, we are planning to bring recommendations for pieces of the Middle Road parcel as the board has requested.
Well, again, I appreciate the vote of the partnership, and certainly will weigh that carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I'm going to be very cautious how I say this to not give the wrong impression. I'm very supportive of exploring affordable housing on Middle Road. I mean, way back when I was sitting on the planning board, I know there's old plans that were, scenarios that have been kicking around for quite some time. So this has been a parcel identified a long time ago that has a lot of merit for it. But I do want to make sure that as we progress, that we can do so in a timely manner. And I recognize that I'm going to refer to the parcel where the COA was considered at one point. That there were some neighbors that may have had some issues with it. That we keep that in mind, that we can address it. But I don't want to put too many eggs in one basket. I want to make sure we can move forward expeditiously with certain other parts of that parcel and attain some affordable housing in that area, and maybe work on a different timetable with the parcel that may have some more conflicts. I just want to make sure that we can segment this and do it so we can get certain units up there sooner than later, and not having to delay what I think is going to be some delays on some of the parcels. So very supportive of Middle Road and developing it in a certain manner, but I just want to be very cautious of how we do it from a process perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Peter, then Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to agree with Corey as far as let's move ahead. I look at this as, and I'm going to use our old terms, as a systems approach. We're looking at a whole bunch of different parcels, whether they belong to the town or whether they're privately owned and offered. There's no reason in the world we have to stovepipe this. It may make sense to put a little bit here and a little bit there. Now, I know that people are going to say that's difficult, but if we look at it as a whole, we can organize how we're going to move forward when that's the case. And I agree, we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, but we need to move ahead. And I guess my question is, when do you think you're going to be back to us? And that's probably to the chair, not to put Ally on the spot, but it'd be nice sooner rather than later. How's that?
Well, I think the process is sort of in the hands of community development a little bit. I'll put it on the agenda as soon as they're ready, is what I'm saying, because I think we should be moving these things along as best we can. So, Ally, what's your timeline? You got any thoughts on timing?
I do have some rough estimates on timeline.
Okay.
So the RFP for the acquisition of property is due October 15th. So we would assume that sometime after that, we would hopefully have some recommendations as to which parcels, would be going forward for potential housing. And so I would say around that same time, we could bring Middle Road back. So I would say, early November, if that is something time-wise that the board is okay with considering.
Yeah, you've heard me say this before, what's our timeline, but that's fine. That's I guess reasonable. I don't want to make a judgment yet because you may get it sooner, but yeah, it's reasonable. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Peter. Jeff?
Yeah, no, I'm in favor of Middle Road as well. I just am waiting for the responses from the rolling RFP. and any other solicitations, just to kind of put Middle Road in the context of overall availability. But I'm certainly in favor of Middle Road as a potential site, big time. So, and I appreciate the housing partnership weighing in. I understand. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions for Ally or for Katie? Okay. Thank you so much for your work on this. And to Katie, and I think Belinda's on the call too, correct? I believe she is as well. Thank you for community development.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
I have my hand up.
You have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
Jeff.
just wanted to say, I think I appreciate your keeping this in front of our, for our review. I think it's really important, and I appreciate your keeping it on the agenda with the kind of alacrity that you're doing. So I appreciate it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
It's very important. Yeah.
It is. It is. Thank you. All right. So we're going to move on from this agenda item, business item. Our next item, last item, is public comments on our business agenda. So if anybody in the public would wish to speak again or now, they may do so. I see that Stephen Buckley's hand is up. I see that Carolyn McClellan's hand is up. And I see that Elaine Gibbs' hand is up. And I'm just going to ask if anybody on the calls would like to speak. Okay, hearing none. Let's start with Stephen Buckley, and just let me know which matter you are speaking to before you start. Well, go ahead, Steve.
Yep, the housing update. So
Okay.
it's fresh in everybody's mind.
Go ahead.
When I asked, I appreciate the response that Katie Donovan and so forth had about rolling, what is rolling and so forth and so on. And I, as a former government bureaucrat, I understand, having been involved in procurement myself, I understand that there's a process for procuring goods and services. And so I understand that there's a certain amount of confidentiality and so forth and so on. At the same time, I don't think there's sometimes the process can get in the way of a better result. And I guess we could just look at the Monomoy Theater overlay process to see, oh, well, we followed the process and it was a good process, but we missed something. And so that's why in this instance, that's an example, I think, of how transparency and of what the criteria is for, why would when we judge, when we have a consultant that says this is a good property and that's not a good property, we need to understand, well, what were the things that you talked about? And it'd be good to know ahead of time. We don't have to find out 6 months or a year from now about why was that property better than that property. So it's kind of like Consumer Reports. If you get that, they judge different things and they say, and here's the things we judged this as being a better product than that. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that I appreciate the bureaucratic considerations and so forth and so on. But at the same time, I think going forward with the housing community engagement consultant and the process going forward, that the more people know about what's going on and how the process works, the better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Carolyn McClellan, you have your hand raised next. Welcome, Carolyn. Just for a matter.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, first of all, I really want to thank everyone on the Board of Selectmen and all the town staff for all the hard work they've done and for keeping housing on the agenda. And I'd like to say, I could see that most of us, all of us, seem to be moving forward in that direction, little tweaks about how to get there. But I really sincerely appreciate the efforts that you're making. And as you know, we on the partnership committee, we really want Middle Road to be viewed in its entirety. We can't decide right now what that's going to look like, how much will be developed, what will be put there. You're going to have this consultant. We're going to look, your decision here now to decide to have the town look at all the land that they have, where best to put housing, what type of housing to go where. We just want Middle Road to be in that soup. As Corey mentioned before, Middle Road has been considered for housing for a long time. I know there might be an abutter issue, and I don't see why that can't be dealt with as it comes up. And I know it can get sticky, and I know there might be issues there, but I really don't think there's any, I don't think that's a legitimate reason to take part of it or a substantial part of it off the table at this point. Something might happen later on. We might reconsider it. That we might find a better place for more housing somewhere else. I'm not saying all that can't happen. What our concern is right now in this preliminary stage, Middle Road has always been dangling there for housing. I'd like it to be considered at this critical point where the town is finally sinking their teeth into this problem. And they should look at Middle Road in its entirety and to see what's going to be. You know, we're not going to decide that here today. That's not our decision right now. It's going to go through many incarnations. There's going to be a lot of public and community input, and let that process play out. I just don't want it to be limited right now, or in the immediate future. Put it on the table and let's see what happens. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate that. Our next commenter is Elaine Gibbs. Elaine?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is about the zoning bylaw and the special town meeting. It's been a really long and exhausting night. Most of the viewers have probably changed the channels, and I want to thank the board for your long night and for your negative vote regarding the citizen petition on the Monomoy Theater.
Thank you. Are you?
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you sort of went out. So go ahead again.
This is about the zoning bylaw change.
Go ahead.
I know it's been a long night and exhausting, and most have changed the channels, but I want to thank you, the board, for the long night and for your negative vote regarding the citizen petition on the Monomoy Theater. Mr. Clark referred to those of us who disagreed with his petition article as having, quote, our little agendas, unquote. Could Mr. Clark have shown any more acrimony, any more condescension, and any more disdain for the planning board, the Board of Selectmen, and the residents of Chatham who cared deeply about the survival of the theater in our town? I hope it fails on Saturday. And if it does, between now and the annual town meeting, I hope Mr. Clark can learn to at least feign respect for the people of Chatham. Our little agendas, quote unquote, are the very thing that has kept Chatham for over 308 years and has protected us from outside influences to preserve it for future generations. I was shocked at his attitude, and I applaud you, and I applaud the people who have spoken up, and the planning board, and I hope FinCom does the same thing. That's our job, and petitioners need to show respect for what we are all trying to do to preserve this town. So thank you, and good night, Chatham. I appreciate your time. You've done a great job, and I hope this thing gets resolved. And it's a shame it has to go to a special town meeting, but hopefully it will fail and it will get done right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine. Okay, so that is there any other speakers for the public comment period? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So I accept a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second?
Second.
Okay, great. So I'll go down the roll. Peter?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
And chair says aye. Right, not to be obvious, but I do want to remind everybody there is a special town meeting Saturday, October 3rd at 1 p.m. Veterans Field. We shall see you all there. I want to thank Jill, the board tonight. I think we had some really good discussions, and again to the town staff for their thoughtful work and presentations, and to the public in general. So everybody have a good night. Go watch the presidential debate.
Night, everyone.
Night, Chatham.